Good afternoon, and welcome to Starbridge. And we'd like to thank you for joining us today for our webinar, It's More Than a Bump on the Head, a Concussion. My name is Laura Arrington, and I coordinate the New York State and the Federal Parent Center. And I'd like to turn it over now to Sharon Johnson.
Yes, hello. My name is Sharon Johnson. I have worked as a FACS coordinator in the Brain Injury Association of New York State in the Finger Lakes region for over 10 years, and I'm very glad to be here and discuss concussion. Today we'll be talking about concussion in youth. Concussion is more than a bump on the head. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, it is a mild traumatic brain injury. It is important to get proper treatment from a doctor as soon as possible when it is suspected there may be a concussion. It is important to understand also that a concussion is a clinical diagnosis. Only a doctor can diagnose a concussion. According to the CDC, there are 1.6 to 3.8 million concussions each year in the United States. Nearly 400 incidents of traumatic brain injury occur daily in New York State, resulting in emergency room treatment or inpatient hospitalization. The risk of sustaining a brain injury is greatest among young children, young adults, and the elderly. The majority of children who have mild or even moderate brain injuries may not be hospitalized. Symptoms from a mild traumatic brain injury may not be apparent immediately after the injury. Falls, motor vehicle accidents, and assaults are the most common causes of brain injury, with falls being the #1 cause. 20% of concussions are sports-related, with a higher percentage among adolescents. Approximately 10% of sports concussions involve loss of consciousness, which means 90% do not lose consciousness. Concussion can also occur in and or out of school, during physical education, on the playground, during travel sport team activities, during school theater programs or chorus, or just horsing around. It is a mild brain injury. A concussion is a type of traumatic brain injury, or TBI, caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head, or by a hit to the body that causes the head and brain to move rapidly back and forth. This sudden movement can cause the brain to bounce around or twist in the skull, stretching and damaging the brain cells and creating chemical changes in the brain. Although concussions are usually not life-threatening, their effects can be very serious. Most concussions occur without the loss of consciousness or amnesia. Concussion typically results in the rapid onset of short-lived impairment or neurological function that resolves spontaneously. However, in some cases, symptoms and signs may evolve over a number of minutes to hours. Recognizing and responding quickly to concussions can help prevent further injury or even death. And 65% of concussions seen in the ER, in the emergency room, occur in youth 5 to 16 years old. And it's important to note that CTs or MRIs are almost always normal in concussion. The reason a CT or MRI is done, it is to check for a more serious brain injury, such as a brain bleed or bruising. And brain injury is an invisible injury. Brain injury is also silent because most children with brain injuries look normal, but they don't feel normal. Children are not just small adults. Their brains are still developing, making them more vulnerable to impact from head trauma. Furthermore, the absence of concussive symptoms does not mean the brain is fully recovered. In children, the extent and duration of the concussion on cognitive function is variable, and even subtle impairment may have dynamic effects on a child's school performance. So, what happens in a concussion? A concussion occurs when a blow to the head causes the brain to slam against the skull beyond the ability of the cerebral spinal fluid to cushion the impact. The impact can cause bruising of the brain, tearing of blood vessels, and nerve damage. And this is really important to remember. Prior concussions may lower the threshold for subsequent concussion injury and also increase severity of symptoms. There is not a lot of room between the skull and the brain, and the cerebral spinal fluid only gives so much support, especially in children where a jolt to the head causes the brain to be more susceptible to wave-like forces, and the neck is not as strong as an adult's, and the skull is not as thick. Here are some physical symptoms. Once you know a student has received a concussion, it is returning to school, it is returning to school at the physician's approval, you may see some of these physical symptoms of concussion. Any of these physical symptoms can increase from stress or lighting or other things. Symptoms may include headache, nausea, fatigue, and lack of energy, clumsiness and poor balance, dizziness and lightheadedness. Sleep problems, either too much sleep or not enough sleep, is common at the time of injury, but also a child might most likely have a lot of sleeping as they recover at home. But when the student returns to school, she might have some sleep issues. So it is important to keep in consistent communication with the parents about how the student is recovering at home. Just to check what kind of issues there are, etc. Some common cognitive symptoms. There are some common symptoms. Remember, the student can have any number of these symptoms or just one or two. Feeling dazed or foggy or fuzzy. I hear this one a lot. Easily confused. Slowed processing. The student might need more time to process information, not only said to them, but also what they might want to say back to you. Easily distracted by noises, movements, and the environment in general. And memory problems. Typically short-term memory is the issue. Long-term memory is typically intact. The student might have trouble organizing things like their own thoughts and the things they need to do in everyday life. A student might have difficulty concentrating, might have also poor mental stamina. And recovery time. Research shows that more than 80% of concussions resolve very successfully if managed within the first 3 weeks post-injury. It needs to be managed very well. Slightly longer than the average recovery time for an adult, which is on the average of 7 to 10 days. So it takes longer for a child to recover, typically. And about 85 to 95% recover in 3 months. So there is a small percentage that might take a little bit longer to recover. Here are some emotional symptoms. They can occur. They might not, but quite often it's common. They can include things like irritability, moodiness. They might be easily overwhelmed, which can be caused by the amount of work to be done and possibly the environment around the student. Personality change may happen in some cases. I've seen this more than a few times. The student remembers who she was prior to injury and now she sees herself differently. And the parents are often mourning the loss of their child. Their personality may have changed. Lack of motivation, it's not laziness. So think about it possibly being the injury to the brain. An emotional outburst can be seen as well. And it's important to understand these symptoms may occur so you understand the student is not lazy or looking for some sort of attention. Vision problems. The student might have blurred or double vision. The eyes might tire more easily. And the student might have trouble reading. Like the words might move around on the page. They might skip words or lines. And typically, a standard eye exam usually shows normal ocular health and acuity. What you might see in concussion in the classroom. Let's look at that. Concussion can cause academic problems for days, weeks, months, or longer. It is important to know that physical and mental overexertion can aggravate symptoms and complicate recovery. Academic stress and failure can increase risk of depression and anxiety, which in turn can hamper recovery. Return to learn is just as important as return to play, and academic supports and accommodations can aid in recovery. It is also very important to know that each student with brain injury has a unique pattern of abilities and deficits, but problems are commonly seen in the following functional areas. A student may be within the normal range of measure on intellectual functioning, yet display significant problems in specific areas of attention, memory, language, visual, spatial, and executive functioning. According to Prague 2004 guidelines, the concept of cognitive rest was introduced with special reference to a child's need to limit exertion with activities of daily living and to limit scholastic activities while still symptomatic. Many doctors are now recommending a student return to school even while symptomatic after a certain amount of time home healing. This will potentially alleviate some anxiety from missing too many school assignments and help with the social emotional aspect of missing out on peer relationships. Okay, let's talk about fatigue. Fatigue is huge. Often due to brain injury, the child can wake up several times a night, or fatigue can come on from cognitive overload. I have had students and their parents tell me that there are days that the fatigue sets in from overdoing it the day before, physically and or cognitively. One student told me when she takes several tests in one day, she quite often will need to take the next day off from school because she is so wiped out. However, I've heard this from many students. Oh, there's other things that you might observe in the classroom. Might be bothered by the bright lights or the fluorescent lights. A student may be bothered by noise, light, and commotion, such as in the hallways and cafeteria. So sometimes the students might need to have delayed passing or a different place to eat their lunch, maybe with a peer. Sometimes environmental modifications can help alleviate some of these issues, where the child sits, lower lighting, short breaks. And a short break might be just allowing the student to leave his desk as needed to walk at the back of the class, stretch, and then sit back down. Ask the student what accommodation might help him. A student may be easily overloaded and shut down. She might get easily frustrated or irritated, especially when feeling overloaded with tasks. She may have been told to do only what she feels comfortable doing, but she knows how much work she missed, and she observes her peers complete tasks as easily as she did prior to injury. So a pile of work on her desk will most likely make her feel overloaded. Her emotions and mood may present as irritability, sadness, nervousness, anxiety, and lack of motivation. This is so very common with kids that haven't come back to school after a long period of time home healing. A student with ongoing concussion issues may have trouble doing more than one thing at a time, such as listening to the teacher and taking notes at the same time. So it's important to put accommodations in place for that. A student may take longer and more effort to accomplish the same work. Concentration can aggravate symptoms. They might be clumsy in the hallway or stairwell. They might have frequent visits to the nurse's office. And they might have late or incomplete homework. Again, the organizational issues usually come into play there. Physical and mental overexertion can aggravate symptoms. It's important to note it can also complicate recovery. As I've mentioned before, recovering from a brain injury involves much more than physical rest. Sometimes school staff are not aware and pull students right back into the grind of academics without making needed accommodations and adaptations. There may be the need to reduce time spent on cell phones, computer reading, or writing at first. Students may need to limit screen time and take a break from activities requiring concentration, learning, and memory. Finding the balance between helping them to return to regular activities and school workloads while ensuring their safety is essential. You might have to look for cues from them. They might not let you know how they're feeling. Here are some PE accommodations. First of all, avoid re-injury, which can be that can easily happen. Avoid overstimulation, such as noise and light, or too much to do. Minimize exertion at first, then increase activity gradually as tolerated. In complicated cases, some physical activity may promote recovery, but follow the doctor's recommendation. And don't substitute mental activity for physical activity. Cognitive activity can be just as taxing as physical activity. Okay. Academic stress and failure can increase risk of depression and anxiety, which in turn can hamper recovery. These are secondary problems. Depression or anxiety can emerge or increase due to mental distress and uncertainty, inability to participate in sports or other usual activities with peers, academic stress, and social isolation. So parents, school staff, student, and medical professionals need to work together. Set up a meeting with your child's school and make sure everyone is on the same page. Parents can share what is happening at home and ask for supports at school, and the school can share what the issues are in the school environment. Schools can get assistance from the Brain Injury Association of New York State for trainings and resources, and families can enroll in the FACTS program, which I will talk about later. Now it's all about striking a balance. There's a medical need for rest and reduced exertion or stimulation. And then there's the academic need to maintain progress and avoid falling too far behind. It is really a balancing act for everyone, especially the students. Always remember that. Academic ideas. Students will have a school plan for reentry either from a school policy for return to learn, or they might implement a 504 plan or a temporary 504 to support the student. If the student already has an IEP, an individual education plan, and may be checked for proper accommodations, tutoring may be needed for a period of time prior to returning to school. The accommodations I'm going to mention are commonly seen in any 504, but these accommodations can be especially helpful to a student returning to school from a concussion, such as extended time on tests and assignments to allow for slower processing speed, especially if there is a significant reading demand. Provide a quiet room for test taking. Provide student with class notes or allow student to audio tape classes. Allow the student to wear sunglasses or a baseball cap to help with light sensitivity. It may help prevent a headache. Preferential seating may be very helpful. Use short, specific instructions and assignments, and be sure they're written in the student's planner or assignment book. Help the student to organize. Check the student for understanding. Many times the student doesn't want to draw attention to himself by asking for help, so you have to be aware of that. Reduce course and workload. If needed, drop unnecessary classes for a little while. Focus on essential material only, and decrease homework or omit homework for a time. Now, let's talk a little bit about postconcussive disorder. Not every child will have this diagnosis, and again, that's diagnosed by a doctor. Post-concussive disorder, also called PCD, may occur when symptoms of concussion last longer than 3 months. Some of the symptoms are headache, dizziness, irritability, anxiety, insomnia, loss of memory are some of the symptoms. Risk factors for complicated recovery are often caused by re-injury before complete recovery. Overexertion, especially early after injury. Significant stress can play a factor. The student is unable to participate in sports or exercise. There is medical uncertainty. They may be worried about when are they going to recover or will they recover. And don't forget about the parents being worried. This is also something the student picks up on. And of course, the academic difficulties that we already talked about. Also, there may be concurrent conditions can play a factor, such as a neck injury and psychological trauma. It can also affect cognitive processes such as behaviors and thinking, as well as emotion. Pre-existing conditions increase chances of post-concussive disorder. Depression, substance abuse, previous concussions, brain injury, seizures, and pre-existing migraines. These are all things that may have been a problem prior to injury. Even anxiety and ADHD. Guidelines for returning to school after concussion. Okay, out of school at first, if necessary, and then a gradual reentry as tolerated. Returning to academic needs the same stepwise approach as returning to physical activity so that a student is not overstimulated to the extent that the brain healing is delayed. Recovery might require that a student stay home without homework for a few days or longer, and to allow maximum cognitive rest, and then resume academic activities slowly. They may need to take rest breaks at school or have a shortened day. Avoid re-injury in sports, gym class, and crowded hallways or stairwells. Now let's talk about neuropsychological testing. Um, this testing can be very beneficial. It is not always needed, but it sometimes can be warranted. If you think a student needs this testing, check to see if the doctor recommends it. A student with postconcussive disorder may benefit from this more extensive evaluation. It is an objective assessment of cognitive and emotional variables. The evaluation will show how the student learns and identifies strengths and weaknesses, which are critical for identifying where help is needed and can assist in developing an effective educational program. The test results can assist in return to play and return to learn decisions, as well as recommendations for strategies, accommodations, and resources for teachers. Okay, now let's talk about the Concussion Management and Awareness Act. Students who have had or may have had a concussion may not be permitted to return to the game in the same day. There needs to be a doctor's clearance required for return to the sport. Students will be required to train their coaches and athletic staff on how to recognize concussions. And parents will also be given information about concussions with permission slips for sports. The Concussion Management and Awareness Act of 2011 requires the Commissioner of Education, in conjunction with the Commissioner of Health, to disseminate rules and regulations related to public school districts, students who suffer concussion at school, or at any school-sponsored event or related activity. The Brain Injury Association was also part of getting this law into place back at that time. And requirements of school districts. This law became effective July 1st, 2012, and requires coaches, physical education teachers, school nurses, and certified athletic trainers to take an approved course on concussion management every 2 years. Specific guidelines. Okay, schools will have concussion management plans in place, but the school staff, such as coaches and teachers, will be trained on symptoms of mild traumatic brain injury. The importance of proper treatment will be emphasized. There will be information regarding causes, symptoms, and signs of brain injury, as well as treatment will be available on the following websites: Department of Health, State Education Department, and the school district website. There will also be needed signed consent forms will be necessary for children to participate in school sports, and immediate removal from activity of a student thought to have had a concussion. The student cannot participate without written consent from a physician. Okay, now here's our REAP program. This is through the Brain Injury Association of New York State, and it creates a wider safety net for all students in school. REAP stands for Remove, Reduce, Educate, Adjust, Accommodate, and PACE. The Brain Injury Association of New York State partnered with Dr. Karen McAvoy from the Rocky Mountain Hospital in Colorado to adapt this project for the Brain Injury Association of New York State. We launched this community-based model to empower students, families, school districts, and medical professionals to achieve better outcomes and safer recovery from concussion. The school team is composed of 4 sub-team groups: a family team, school physical team, school academic team, and the medical team. Upon the students or athletes return to school, all 4 teams observe, track, and communicate closely for a 3-week period, depending upon the speed of symptom resolution. REAP can help implement an educational program for sports, medical, and academic staff. And REAP can also help with development and implementation of return to play and return to learn policies. If followed closely, REAP can maximize student support and improve concussion management while preventing a secondary hit before an athlete is fully recovered. A digital version can be downloaded from the Brain Injury Association's website. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the Brain Injury Association of New York State. We are a membership organization of individuals with brain injury, family members, professionals, clinicians, providers, and advocates. We're a New York State affiliate of the Brain Injury Association of America, and we're a statewide organization with a volunteer board of directors. And what we offer is family helpline, there's the 800 number there. We have our FACS program, which I'll talk more about in a minute. It's Families Advocacy Counseling and Training Services. We have assistance with accessing support services through the Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities and the Department of Health waiver programs. We also provide education and trainings, prevention programs, support groups. We have one here in Rochester, which I facilitate. We have the LearnNet website and REAP, and we have our annual conferences and symposiums. Okay, now before I go, I do want to talk a little bit more about the FACS program. It is advocacy for children with acquired brain injury. We link to community resources, community education, provide traumatic brain injury trainings, and advocacy for educational accommodations. We're a statewide network of FACS coordinators working full-time in the state, so we are available across the state. We are available to individuals that had sustained a brain injury prior to age 22 and their families. We are through the Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities grant that provides this grant so that we can run the program in the state. We can work with any age. However, the proof of injury needs to be prior to age 22. However, you are welcome to call us at any kind of issue with anyone's brain injury, regardless of age, so that you can get the information you need. Emotional support for adults through support group and the Brain Injury Association resources. And there's also, the support group that I facilitate. We meet every second and fourth Wednesday at the Al Siegel Center at 7 o'clock. We often have guest speakers on topics of interest and occasional outings as a group. This past Friday, they just went to the circus. Please call me if you or someone you know is interested in joining us. We also have LearnNet, which is a wonderful website. We've even gotten an award on it, called Project LearnNet. So that's www.projectlearnnet.org. You'll get this information after the webinar, available on Starbridge's website. And of course, we have the REAP project, which I've already talked about. And we can do trainings and help out, anyone that needs the help. And you can call the Brain Injury Association's Family Helpline if you have questions about more of what we do, because it's more than what I've mentioned here. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and I know we learned a lot today. That was a very informative webinar, and we so appreciate your time and sharing all your information with us. And again, you've gotten lots of information from Sharon. Feel free to contact the Brain Injury Association for more information, or as well, if you have other questions, you can contact Starbridge. Thank you for joining us today, and have a good afternoon. Goodbye.